Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Cabrakan. Cabrakan is a unique guardian smite who has no movement abilities and is required to be near or in melee range to just hit people with any of his abilities. As a result though, this means that when Cabrakan's abilities do hit, they have a huge impact. In turn, Cabrakan is viable as a support, jungler, and solo laner, but this comes with the caveat of only being good against certain characters and is useless against others. The too long didn't watch version of this is that Cabrakan is very good against characters with no movement abilities or their only movement ability is a dash, not a leap or a teleport, and is also good against characters who lack range CC. There are also more hyper-specific good and bad matchups, but we'll get into that later. For now, builds. Cabrakan can do a lot of damage, so for jungle, you want full damage with maybe 1 or 2 tank items. Then for solo lane, you want a bruiser build. And for support, you want a full tank build with at least 1 damage item. Buying maybe another damage item isn't unheard of though. Relics wise, you definitely absolutely need Blink on Cabrakan. There is no argument here. His range is just too stubby, you need it. Then aggressive relics like Sunder are also very good on him second, but the standout relic is definitely Horrific Emblem. And when you're in a jungle with a damage build, you need beads. Shard wise, Claw Shard works for him in the jungle, then Horn Shard everywhere else. Recipe wise, Party Punch is the perfect fit in the jungle. Then you go Sturdy Stew in the support role, and finally Bountiful Bow in the solo lane. Let's get into one of the most boring passives in all of Smite. Cabrakan and anybody near him takes 5% less damage. And that is it. As I mentioned, Cabrakan is very short range, so luckily it's pretty easy to keep your teammates in this range, while still being effective. And of course, needing to be in melee range to do your damage means that having 5% damage mitigation is very beneficial, and it also works in specific matchups where true damage is a factor, like against Bakasura. Just keep this passive in the back of your head while fighting, and try to provide it to your teammates whenever you can, even if you're all out of abilities. Abilities such as his first ability. Cabrakan becomes immune to roots and slows and gains movement speed. Cabrakan's next basic attack within this 5-second window will deal bonus damage and stun, and Cabrakan has no basic attack movement speed penalty for the duration. This of course is a nasty ability when it hits, but it has a multitude of downsides. This is where Cabrakan's finicky matchups start to come up. Cabrakan literally does not care about slows or roots, so Nox, Erlong, Martikaras, Cernanos, and many others simply are non-factors to Cabrakan. Then gods like Ganesh or Charon who focus on silencing don't matter much either, since Cabrakan just needs to activate the ability once and it'll stay active and be able to be used, even under a silence. But anyone who uses things like stuns or knockouts instead can be a huge problem for Cabrakan. Gods like Bacchus come to mind as just shutting down Cabrakan's advances no matter what. And naturally, whoever you want to jump on will surely just use their movement ability to get away from you before you hit them, so that's where Blink being an absolute necessity comes into play. Compounding this issue, but also increasing the effectiveness of this ability when it does hit, is Cabrakan's second ability. Once leveled, Cabrakan gains a secondary passive. He gains protections for every instance of damage taken from all sources, up to 5 stacks. Upon activation, Cabrakan deals damage in a small cone AoE in front of himself, granting mana for every enemy hit with the ability. If Cabrakan was at maximum passive stacks when he activated the ability, all enemies hit will also be stunned. Overall, a pretty basic but effective ability, and it's very spammy. Yet, as with his first ability, is hamstringed by that absurdly low range and its interaction with Blink. As you can guess, this ability is best used when you stun with it, comboing into your first ability, since that ability's stun does not have DR on it. But to get the stun, you need to take damage, and if you take damage, you won't be able to blink. So you still generally 1 blink 2, but if you get the opportunity to blink and stun with your 2, that's a far better option. Still though, you absolutely want to use this ability in day-to-day uses, not just on gods. It's great for wave suppression as well as just poking enemies. It's a nice little mind game in the support and solo lane roles, since you're able to aim at either an enemy god or the wave, then flick your camera at the last moment to hit the other target. Never forget about that bit of mana gain you get from using this ability either. It's another good reason just to get in people's faces during the laning phase and just smack them with this ability just cuz. It's especially useful to get more mana thanks to Cabrakan's iconic third ability. Cabrakan roots himself in place and begins channeling. He can channel for up to 10 seconds and consumes mana every 0.5 seconds. Enemies within the area Cabrakan creates around him are damaged and trembled every 0.5 seconds, and will also be affected by a unique vortex form of CC which pulls enemies towards Cabrakan, like Poseidon's Whirlpool. But of course this vortex isn't powerful enough to keep enemies from walking out of the area, they can just walk out more slowly. Cabrakan is susceptible to all forms of CC in this ability, but have no fear, as this ability has a mere 3-second cooldown, so even if it gets interrupted, it's coming right back up in a moment. And that's where Bountiful Bow comes in. This ability basically has no cooldown if you have that recipe. Really where the drawbacks come in is again, limited range, but here's a new one, mana cost too. This ability will drain right through all of your mana without hesitation, so even though it's very spammable, you don't really want to spam it. Cabrakan's good in the solo lane because, well, he is a good bruiser, but it's also because he gets access to the blue buff in that role. This ability really is that mana hungry. But that mana cost is also a testament to its effectiveness. You can put yourself right in the middle of the wave and pound it to death with ease, and it fits perfectly into our current combos. 1, blink 3, then chase with your 2, or if you get lucky, blink 2, stun 3, and then chase with your 1. Your 1 of course being much better to chase with thanks to the extra movement speed. While it is an ability you want to throw out as often as you can, you need to be very wary of firstly, the mana cost, obviously, but also the fact that it roots you in place. Just sitting there for 2 seconds or so for some extra CC on enemy carries during a fight is totally valid, but just sitting there leaves you wide open to retaliation in teamfights, so you do need to look out for opportunities to use this ability, but don't be too overzealous and get yourself killed by using it. So this enforces the way that Cabrakan is only good into so many characters. Characters with fast or even instant CC like Nox or Ganesh, or gods who can seal your fate with one swift combo like Ymir stunning you and then walling you in, things like that. Luckily, Cabrakan has a great opportunity to use this ability when it combos with his ultimate. Cabrakan deals damage in a wide area in front of himself, then at the end of this AoE, 4 separate structures will spawn, forming a cone between Cabrakan and the walls. These walls will die to 4 basic attacks from enemies, but only 1 basic attack from Cabrakan himself in case he needs to kill them quickly. And keep in mind you can use your first ability's attack speed bonus to kill all these walls very quickly just in case you need to. This ability is what seals Cabrakan's fate as only being good into certain gods, because while someone like Skadi, Almazen-Kab, Poseidon, or Cernunnos start trailing your 3 and you got yourself a dead enemy god on your hands, so long as your teammates are paying any attention. But while in Anhur, Discordia, Merlin, basically any god with a leap or teleport instead, and they're like Stephen A. Smith, they don't care, they're getting out of there no problem. Luckily though, this does catch characters with dashes, as I mentioned with Cernunnos, which has been an issue thus far for Cabrakan, enemies just kinda dashing away from him. So if you can't already see it, this ability is Cabrakan when it comes to literally any teamfight. He needs to hit this ability on an enemy carry to either box them in for a kill, or force out their movement ability and or relics. Of course, this is why Cabrakan shines against gods with limited mobility, since they just kinda have to sit there and get shifted around by Cabrakan's third ability. Easy enough, right? And the only way they can get out again is if the walls are destroyed, which is no easy feat, even for a late game hunter with all that attack speed. But naturally, if you can box in a mage, it's even better since they're less proficient at basing attacking down those walls. Achieving this ultimate on a priority target, meaning a mage or a hunter, is almost never possible without blink, but don't forget about just walking up with your first ability's movement speed either. Just one, run at a squishy target who has no access to their movement ability, and boom, just wall them in, following up with your 1 stun if you still have it, and of course, your 3. Also, look to fish out enemy beads with Cabrakan too. It's great since all 3 of his core abilities have hard CC on them, so you may want to stun with your 1 or 2, then wait for them to use their purification beads before activating your 3. Then, once their CC immunity runs out, start slamming them with your 3. And yeah, that's what Cabrakan does. He traps the target in his walls, and with a damage build, kills them to death, or with a tanky build, annoys them to death. He's very simple. This ability, being a wall though, has plenty of niche uses too. Blocking enemy projectiles such as Discordia or Nox ultimate, blocking off enemies as they chase your team down, and so on. Your main goal is trapping in targets, but a big wall is a big wall, so don't get too tunnel visioned and only ever use it to trap people. Speaking of which, some combos with Cabrakan. 1, blink, basic attack, 2, 3, chase with ultimate. Blink 2, stun 1, basic attack, ult 3. Blink 3, build up some stacks on your 2, cancel your 3, then 2. Ultimate, chase with 1. For ability leveling, you want your 3 at level 1, your 2 at level 2, and your 1 at level 3. From there, it really depends on your role. All roles max the second ability next, but the soul lane and support roles focus on the 3 next, whereas the jungle tends to focus more on the first ability. Whichever route you go, you only put a level into your ultimate at level 5, then skip leveling it until your core 3 abilities are maxed. This gives you more leeway to put points into whatever ability you want really after the 2 is maxed. You can even just level the 1 and the 3 simultaneously. It works fine if you prefer the way that feels. But whatever you do, max the 2 first and skip putting levels into the ult after level 5. Which is ironic given how much Cabrakan relies on it. We've come a long way since Cabrakan is first released. Now we have Guardians with hard CC that travels more than 3 times the range of Cabrakan's longest traveling CC abilities. But Cabrakan is simply excellent in certain situations, so it should tell you that Cabrakan's design is absolutely 100% working. You just need to apply it in the right situation. I think that's where Cabrakan's bad reputation comes from, since the majority of players in SMITE don't play ranked. Picking Cabrakan blind will, most of the time, see you in a situation where he simply won't be effective. However, if you're playing a ranked game mode and can draft Cabrakan into characters you know he's good against, he's going to be an absolute monster. There really is nothing a small section of gods in the game can do against Cabrakan if he just blink ults them, which, need I remind you, is extremely easy to do. So pick Cabrakan sparingly, but you absolutely want him up your sleeve as a god who can absolutely crush certain matchups. Artemis and Chernobog stick out to me as gods right now who are meta, but Cabrakan just eviscerates. You certainly need your team behind you as Cabrakan, but that's a flaw that all Guardians share, so I'm sure you expected that by now. But the beauty of Cabrakan is that when you're in those good matchups, you're just 3 button clicks away from a kill or full team fight win. That's all I have on Cabrakan for now. Thanks for watching.